What is going on, you Mongolian albino alligators? In today's video, we're going to be going over the top 5 soul laners with their builds, plus the honorable mentions of the newest patch. This is the patch that introduced Equinox, Stormseeker, just some new items into the game, plus the Bull Demon King on solo side of the map, so there's a lot more to fight over there. So a lot of things changed, and we kind of went back to a meta that we already had just not too long ago. So we'll just talk about that, plus the builds today. Try and give you guys the rundown, everything you should be playing in ranked to win right now, or your casuals, you know. Of course, like always, this is off the top of my head, so bear with me a little bit. Oh, my bad, but let's go ahead and get into the video. We're going to start at number 5, like always. Number 5, I am going to have Chalk. I think Chalk's been good for a very long time. He hasn't been nerfed. His 1 and 2 still do crazy amounts of damage. 330 base, 340 base. That's just crazy base damage for a tank, so you're very threatening. You're very hard to gank. Good sustain. Counters ADCs, good into mages with the big mitigation from his ult, so you can avoid really big damaging ults like Cuckoo ult, Poseidon ult, Zeus ult, just like whatever. You can just die people with that. And he gets so many protections from his 2 that he can make really good use out of a lot of the meta items, because you can get up to 100 protections as long as you hit 2 gods in a team fight, or 4 minions in a wave. So yeah, that's Chalk. And I guess I should show you build. That is not the build. This is the blue collar. This is the blue collar Chalk build, but that's not what you should be going. That's for something else. But you are going to be going Bluestone. I like to go Segment Scepter first item. If you're not too comfortable on Chalk, you can just rush defense on him like a Glad Shield, and that's perfectly fine. Really up to you, but I think this item is very good, and it works with the rest of your build. Of course, you always go Teleport still these days. That really hasn't changed. The Chalk build hasn't changed much for me. I like to go either Glad Shield here. I think it's like a fine item to just start out as. Or Contagion. If you're up against an Equinox soul laner, I recommend going Contagion here, so you can actually fight with them a little bit, and the anti-heal will come in handy. And you will, a lot of games, be up against that, as we will see in the rest of this video. So you can consider going Contagion there. I like to go Prophetic into a Pridwin. Now you're probably thinking, wow, you are overcapped CDR a ton here. Yeah, we don't care at all. I mean, we're getting all of these items regardless. We don't really care about the overcapping. And if you really do care, you can just go Contagion here, and you won't be overcapped. A lot of games you will want to be having that. Sometimes if they have a lot of magical damage, I'll go a magical defense item here, like a Heartward Glyph. I personally think the purple Heartward Glyph is super underrated. I think people should be buying this a lot more. The silence comes in handy in a lot of team fights, especially on Chalk. Multiple silences just go so hard. It's hard for OP mages to do what they want to do. So you can consider going that, but if you're not really too worried about their magical damage, which you don't really have to be because you already get so many protections from this build, plus your 2, plus the fact that you're going Redstone, you can go something like a Binding here and Arc Druids, and always consider if there's a lot of auto attackers on enemy team, it's kind of the meta right now, consider going in Midgarding because that's also pretty strong. So this is the build. Notice I went Redstone. I go Redstone on every single Bluestone character now, besides maybe like King Arthur if you're going to play him. I think Redstone is much better now after the nerfs to Brooch, and just the fact that Redstone was already kind of viable and was just kind of competing a little bit, but now I just think it's so strong, especially with the builds that you can go. So this would be the Chalk build at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have Odin. Not my dog, but Odin, he was recently buffed. He's pretty strong. He got nerfed a little bit, I think, going into this patch, and I think some of the meta characters are good into him, but you can't really go wrong with his character still. Even if they have a bunch of jumps, your ult still gets good value. You can force their jumps and everything, and a lot of times they won't have those jumps, and you can punish them for that. So Bluestone again. This time I like to rush a Breastplate on him. I think the cooldown rush to 20% plus the defense with your shield makes a lot more sense for Odin. Of course, he doesn't heal, so he can't go Scepter like Chalk. But yeah, it just makes a lot more sense to get that full CDR and some prots online so that you can get more effective health going with your shield. We're going to be going the same thing, Teleport. We're going to be rushing that Breastplate into a Mystical Mail. Same thing before. If you want to go Contagion here, it's kind of like a mini Mystical Mail, especially into these healing soul laners with Equinox, maybe Death Soul and stuff like that. You consider that, but Mystical still very strong. If you need some mana here, you don't necessarily need it, but you need some magical defense plus mana, you consider going in Oni Hunters. You could also throw in a Prophetic in this build if you want. I think that's fine. I personally lately have been going a little bit more damage in my builds, like an Arc Druids or a Binding, just to be a little bit more threatening. Because you're going to go a Pridwing Glyph, which also does a lot of damage, and then Redstone. So you'll have enough protections between your Redstone and all of your protections items here. So you don't really need that Prophetic, even though I still think it's one of the best tank items in the game. But they're super threatening with this build. Redstone, I just think once you finish that Redstone, as long as you use all of your buttons in a team fight on the enemy, you blink on them, you proc your Glorious Pridwin on them, and you hit all of your abilities and get some auto attacks cancels off. With all that attack speed, you're going to be very, very threatening and do a lot of damage. So Yeah, I think you can basically just kill people on your own. Of course, on Chalk, go Blink, and of course, on Odin, go Blink. Basically always, no real exceptions here. Pretty standard stuff. You'll be doing pretty well with this build. You should see success. So that's Chalk at that's Odin at number 4. Coming in at number 3, we have Wukong. Wukong's still a very good standard solo laner. Good into the meta picks right now. That's part of the reason I bumped him up a little bit. And I also like Soiter right now. Soiter is very strong in my opinion, and that's why I rush on him. It's very easy for you to do this just because he's a very safe character. You have your passive, which gives you protections. Sometimes you can get away with not going teleport on this character just because of your bird. It can get back to lane super, super fast, but teleport gets value regardless of whether you can get back to lane fast on any character. So yeah, we rushed into that Soiter. This is the build I've been going. You're a little mana hungry with this, but I think it's worth it. You go into a Glad Shield, into an Arc Druids, or you can go Binding here if you want, but I like the Arc Druids more just because it gives you MP5. Straight into that Pridwin Glyph, which you can go Red Pridwin if you'd like. I think Blue Pridwin's a little bit better on Wukong, just makes better use out of his ult, because a lot of times you're not going to be right on top of them with your ult to proc it. The Glorious Pridwin, that is. Redstone. Like I said, even on Wukong, I'm going Redstone now just because that attack speed in teamfights is actually really, really nice. Between Soul Eater plus Redstone attack speed plus Wukong passive stuff, you hit really hard with your auto, so you can kind of just own people. And those extra protections from Redstone contributing to your Reverent Pridwin or your Blue Pridwin, very, very strong. Most of the time, I go a Binding last just because a little bit more damage, a little bit more tankiness, just kind of fits the build perfectly. But of course, like always, like I said before, consider having that Midgardian mail, and of course, consider having a full magical defense item if you really need it into their team comp. Maybe they have 2 mages, maybe they have a high damaging support mage like an Ares or something. You can consider slamming like a Pestilence or a Heartward Glyph, like I said. I don't really ever go Amulet of the Stronghold anymore, even though it's still a good item. I just think this one is better. I just love the silence so much, so something you can consider going. That would be the Wukong build. And of course, go Blink on him. Some games you can go Beads. I think it's pretty beta male to go Beads Wukong. So I'm not going to recommend that. I don't want my viewers to be bitches out there, but yeah, if you need to do that, I guess do it. Coming in number 2, we have Osiris. Now, this is where the meta has shifted a little bit back to what it was. It's auto attack solo laners again, and Osiris is at number 2. You guys are probably going to guess who's number 1, but of course, before we go to that, we're going to do honorable mentions. But for now, let's just go over the Osiris build. Pretty standard stuff here, I'd say. You go Axe. Now, you can go Destal on him and other characters, but I think it just makes you a little bit too squishy late game between your Death's Embrace plus your first item, which is Equinox, and you can maybe even sell that for another damage item later on. You can even sell it for a defense item if you prefer Destal, but I just think that's too many hoops to go through to get to your full build. So yeah, you go Axe plus tier 1 Equinox, you go Teleport. The reason this is so good with Axe is because Axe of Animosity actually makes you pretty tanky. It gives you a good amount of procs, CCR, health, good amount of damage as well, so you combine that with the Equinox damage plus attack speed and the attack speed from the rest of the build, and it's just a really, really nice build to have. So yeah, Equinox is not overrated. It's very strong, especially with Axe. So usually what you do is you go Berserkers, Shoguns. On Osiris, you don't necessarily need this, but I just think having that permanent attack speed is really, really nice on him when you have the Equinox, because it helps you out-trade people really, really hard. Go to that Kin Size, into the Axe of Animosity. At this point, you have a ton of attack speed, especially with Purple Tiki. This basically puts you at the cap. And then last item, if you want a little bit more damage, you can go the Executioner Glyph, and you will literally one-shot people. You won't be as tanky as you possibly could be, but sometimes just being more threatening and killing them is better than being tanky. So you can just slam an Venom Executioner there. Of course, you can slam a Midgardian. You can consider going like a Binding or even a Pridwin. Pridwin Glyph is still really strong on Osiris as well, as you can go that there. You just don't have as many protections to back it up, but it's still decent. And then, of course, most of the time you can go Blink. Osiris doesn't have to go Blink. You can get away with Thorns and just like ulting into a team fight, or if you really need beads. But again, I don't think you should really ever buy beads. Just go in. Just stop being scared and go in, So, yeah, basically that. So last item, situational, really up to you. But this build is very, very strong and potent right now. And if you don't want all that attack speed from the Shoguns here, then you can consider going Prophetic. And I think Prophetic is a huge wombo combo with Osiris. And this would be really good, especially once you get that fully stacked up. The extra mitigation combined with Osiris mitigation, you'll be very tanky, yet very powerful with this build. And of course, before we get to number 1, even though you're probably guessing who it is, let's go over the honorable mentions real quick. 2 Guardians, actually. I still think Guardians are worth playing in solo, especially this one, Cthulhu. Still good character. The buffs they gave him, very good. Still going to go Conduit on him. With that tier 1 breastplate, go some potions. You can only get 4 potions with this bad boy. Go Teleport, just too good for lane pressure, getting around the map. So we rush that breastplate. Now this is a character I don't really ever go Mystical Mail on. You can go it, I think it's fine. But I personally prefer other options because he's a very blink reliant character in team fights. You want to blink, dash in, get your ult off, all that good stuff, and Mystical can kind of be a nombo for that. It does help with the conduit gem nerfs. It helps you farm a little bit, so you can consider going it. But a lot of times I just go straight into a prophetic here and start stacking that bad boy up right away, because once you get that fully stacked with that mitigation plus Cthulhu passive, you are so tanky in your ult and you are still very, very threatening. Then we go into Avoid Damaru because, of course, magical pen for a magical character makes a ton of sense. Usually I go Binding for even more pen to just one-shot them while being super, super tanky. Gem of Focus, last item, very situational, but as Cthulhu, a lot of times you're going to be gunned down by auto attackers in your ultimate with kin size, so you want a mid-guardian in order to survive. That's basically the build every single time. Again, Mystical Melee is situational. It's fine to go on him if you want. Really up to you. But a lot of these other items, I just don't really ever buy on this character because you're just not making good use out of him. Like Arcturids, you can consider going Glad Shield, but Glad Shield's pretty overrated in general, so I don't really ever build it that much. Pribwin's not great on Cthulhu because it procs after you come down from your big ult. And yeah, so he kind of has like a pretty set in stone build. Even if they have crit, I don't really go Spectral anymore these days. I just go Mid-Guardian. I think it's a better counter. So that is Cthulhu. As another honorable mention. And the other honorable mention is Cerberus. I still think this character is worth playing. I think people are underrating him, especially right now with all the Equinox buyers. And what is Cerb good into? He's good into healing. So especially if they have Destal plus Equinox and you're Cerb with Tainted, you are stealing all of that healing. You're completely nullifying those two items that they bought. So he's a very hard counter into these types of matchups. So up to you. I like Tainted personally. You can go Conduit if you want still. I'm just going to go throw both in here. Same thing though. We go the tier 1 breastplate. Of course we go TP, so I just won't include that right here. You guys don't need it. We already have the two starter items here, so I don't want to mess it up completely. You can get an extra potion with, or 2 extra potions with Tainted as well, which I like. So you can go 4 health, 2 multi, and help with a little bit of mana sustain, considering the fact that Tainted has no MP5 or mana sustain on it. But of course, it's the same start, at least. You go breastplate, except you go straight into a mystical after this. You can also consider going Contagion. Now, if you go Tainted, you go breastplate, and you go Contagion second, you are actually almost 100% anti-heal on them because of Surge passive plus Tainted. So you're completely countering their build. So I don't think people realize this right now. So I think Cerb is actually a really good matchup into it. So you consider going that Contagion, but Mystical Mail is also really good. If you're really frustrated with that healing, it's literally just slam that Contagion, like I said. And then we go Void Damaru into our Pribbon Glyph. Of course, very good on Cerb. Pribbon Glyph makes perfect sense on him. You're going to be blink-onking in team fights. You're hitting multiple people, getting multiple procs and hits of it. And we go to Conduit Gem or Gem of Focus for that extra damage and extra procs, and we go to a Binding. This is basically the set in stone build. Consider going Mid-Guardian if you want, but I still really like this build because you're very threatening with this. Magical damage from Pidwin Glyph, magical damage from Mystical Mail, magical damage on all of your Cerb abilities. We have Pen here, we have Pen here, we have Pen on our Cerb too. We have extra damage from our Gem of Focus that's increasing by 15% on all of our abilities. I mean, this is just, it's just such a sick Guardian build. That's why I think people should still be playing them. I just think this build can't really be matched by the physical build right now, apart from maybe the auto attackers. And, you know, of course, the auto attackers we must talk about at number 1, Balona. If I can get that to show up. Just too strong with the build. It's way too threatening on enemies. ADCs and mages late game can just literally solo them, 1v2 them with the build. Just way too strong, I think, with this this build. And can't really be punished in lane. Doesn't really have any bad matchups. Hard to gank. Really nothing wrong here, you know. So we will be going tier 1 Equinox plus Axe. Like I said before, same thing applies. Just a little bit too squishy with Death Embrace. Even with this build, you can consider selling your Equinox for a tank item late game, especially if you go that XE later on, so you're just a little bit tankier. But, you know, pretty much the same regardless. So we go into our Equinox first. Then we go into our Berserkers. Definitely want Shogun's Berserkers because whereas Osiris doesn't get as much tankiness from having more attack speed because you just want a little bit, you just do a little bit more damage with him. Balona gets a little bit tankier by having more attack speed because not only does she heal more from her 3, that's not really that relevant. The more important part is the 1, just being able to auto attack more and getting more block stacks. It makes it a lot harder for people to kill you. And also you get protections and movement speed from auto attack. So, but you should basically always have those in team fights anyway. So you go this straight to the kin size. At this point, if anybody 1v1s you, jungler, no matter who it is, you're just going to out-trade him as long as you can get multiple auto attacks off. Of course, we slam that Axe of Animosity. Same thing applies here as it does on Osiris. situational build, basically. You can go that XE and go XE glyph if you like, if you feel like you just want to do some more damage. And of course, like I said, you can sell your Equinox late game for a defense item here. Say, so you want to 1v1 their ADC, you will absolutely slam their ADC with this build if you sell that for Guardian Mail. You probably slam him anyway with just an Equinox late game. It falls off a little bit, but it's really not that bad. It's basically Death's Embrace heals when you can go Axe. You basically can go Axe Animosity with Death's Embrace heals, which is super nice. So I'll go ahead and slam these situational items. Same thing as Osiris. Binding last item is nice on her. You'll ult into a teamfight's proc to binding and get that pen shred for when you slam them with your autos. Same thing with Pridwin as well. Glorious Pridwin, very strong with Balona as well because you'll proc right away right when you ult on top of them. So yeah, that's Balona number 1. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, top 5 is so different. Oh my gosh, why is all these things changing? Little things always confound the meta and mess it up and change things. And then there's ripple effects, and there's characters that you have to pick to counter those characters because now they're super meta. And there's just so many things that go into changing up the meta. But you know, it's pretty clear cut and dry right now, I'd say, as to why the top 5 has changed, because Equinox is very, very strong. So you want to abuse it while you can to win your ranked games, win your casuals, do whatever you want. I don't care. It's up to you. But anyway, that was the top 5 solo laners. I hope you guys enjoyed it, learned a thing or two. And I'm in Italy right now, actually. I am going to be in Italy from April 26th to May 3rd. So I've recorded some videos to upload while I'm gone, and this happened to be one of them. So yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying playing Smite. I hope I'm having fun in Italy. But yeah, I hope you guys learned a thing or two. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe and healthy as always. Peace out, Girl Scouts. Bye.